What's up, y'all? We're gonna make this a little more relaxed today. Um, Relaxed being I'm not in a suit, I'm not looking at a script. Just come in to share a little bit about real estate underwriting and investments, and how to value an investment using an institutional grade financial model. Um, so the model that we're looking at, it's a model that me and Josh put together over here at the Fractional Analyst. If you want to pick it up, you can pick it up at the link down below. This is an institutional grade financial model. We spent over 300 hours on it. You're going to get it for 300 bucks. 300 bucks, what am I saying? You're going to get it for $29.95. So it's something like 10 bucks an hour, but it's an incredible tool, that we spend a lot of time on. It combines over 10 years of collective experience into a financial model, and it can really analyze just about any scenario, with multifamily acquisitions, both core stabilized properties, or value add distressed properties. It can run a lot of scenarios. So the scenario that we're going to take a look at here, this is a distressed 3-story garden style apartment, built in 1982. I'll kind of hover over to these areas. Spread across 10 buildings, 157 units, so about 16 units per building. You can sort of imagine that it'd be like 5 to 6 units on each floor, spread across 10 buildings. So pretty typical for what we're seeing here around the Florida area, around the Orlando area in Florida. Average unit size 815 square feet. I'll come back to valuation here in a second. In-place rents, 1,100 bucks. That's derived from a rent roll deposit, which we have over here. Rent roll deposit, you can dump in the information from the seller, and all of that gets synthesized here into your unit mix. Tells you how many units are there, how many are occupied, square footage, all that good stuff. All this stuff that you would usually have to manually enter in on your own could take hours. We've made it to where it takes all of 30 seconds. So coming back to the summary page. Yeah, this is more on valuation. It's more about research. We'll come back to those later. In-place occupancy comes from that rent roll deposit, last day updated. So those are kind of like the general building details. You would typically get those pieces of information either from the broker who had sent you the information. Maybe you're doing the direct outreach and you found the data online. All of that's pretty easy to find. That would kind of be step one. Step two would then be to look at, okay, so I know how big the property is. I know some general details about it. I know vintage, right? Year built, that's going to be kind of helpful. If it's an older building, you can kind of get an idea of like, okay, I probably have to replace the roofs. I probably have to replace the HVAC. Older building usually means value add. So then you start to ask the broker or ask the seller some questions about the asset. And you'd ask things like, when are the last time the roofs have been replaced? How many of the units have been renovated recently? What do those renovations look like? How are tenants liking the property? And I mean, to be very fair, all of these will be good diligence questions, but oftentimes the broker and the seller, they're trying to present the most rosy picture as possible. But you never know. Sometimes you get an honest seller, an honest broker, and they tell you a lot. So it's always good to ask the questions. So then, assuming that you like the property, some basic information about the property, I think the next thing would then be to say, okay, I know what it's being rented for right now. Let me go dig in and let's do some market research on rents. So for market research, you know, assuming that the property is actually distressed, meaning that the units need to be renovated, the landscaping is horrendous, the pool deck is busted up, all this stuff. That could be an indicator of it being below market rent. On the flip side, let's say that you've gotten pictures from the broker, maybe even been able to tour the property, and it looks like it's in pretty decent shape. Could be an opportunity to just organically raise rents. But oftentimes there's a reason that the rents are the way that they are. So it's good to kind of dig in and see, is there real opportunity here, or are the rents capped where they're at, and there's no real opportunity. That's going to drive how much you should be willing to pay for the property in order to buy it. In this situation, we're saying that organically we could push rents $600 a month per unit. To be very frank, that's pretty dang aggressive to get that much organic rent growth. But just under this example scenario, that's what it is. Renovated market rents are a little bit higher than that, meaning that if we go a step further and actually renovate some units, this is where we think we could push rents to. So yeah, step one, figure out some details about the building. Step two, do a little bit of a market study, understand, what other assets they're doing in the area, what they're charging for rent, what their amenities look like, what's the condition of the units, to understand what you could reasonably raise these rents to with renovating and without renovating. So that should give you a pretty good idea of the revenue side of operations. Then the other side of operations are expenses. So again, there could be inefficiencies here in the expenses, and there could be opportunities to decrease cost. But on the other side, maybe they're not spending enough on certain categories. Under this scenario, the only thing that we've identified in this mock scenario is they weren't holding any replacement reserves, which is a really dangerous practice. So we'd always recommend holding replacement reserves. So operations is another area where you can look at improving operations, right? Revenue, you want to look for areas to go up. Expenses, you want to look for areas to go down, ultimately to increase the net operating income. And if you're savvy, you may have looked at this and said like, oh, trailing 12 income statement, the net operating income, which is the income that the property is producing, is actually higher than the first year. Why is that? Well, you may also notice that absorption and turnover and general vacancy go up, and we've put in some more concessions. And this loss to lease figure is really big because we're pushing rents in that first year, trying to bring them up to market. And so the income in the first year has gone down because we're bringing operations to a stabilized place. So that would be, kind of another area to look at, that certain operators are not always conservative and realistic about. This model enables you to take a look at the historicals and make a realistic projection based on how you think operations are going to go. Do you think that that the occupancy is just going to stay as it is and it'll steadily climb? Do you think that you're going to have to force vacancy to bring rents to market so then you can bring occupancy back up? That's what this model allows you to do, and that's what's shown in this first scenario is a higher loss to lease and a higher turnover in that first year. Loss to lease meaning just that difference between what are the in-place rents versus what is the market rent. And then you'll notice there's this big jump between the trailing 12 to your income at sale. And that's because over time, and this model is showing over a period of 7 years, we're able to get operations to where they should be and generate a lot more income off of this property. And subsequently, that's how we're getting to these great returns. So I'll go over the return metrics here, and then we'll backpedal into, how are we getting to these values and all that. So most models will only have levered return metrics. So what is unlevered versus levered? That is if you're not applying debt to a property, if you're just going to buy it all cash, then that would just be fully unlevered, meaning that there's no debt on the property. Typically, it is accretive or to your benefit to add debt to a property, assuming that the cost of debt is less than your yield on the property. So I'll do a little side table here real quick. I'll open up another tab to kind of show this. What do I mean by that? The yield on the property and your cost of debt. So we'll go back to this summary page. This stabilized yield on cost said 13.5%. So this gets a yield out to 13.5%. The cost of debt under this scenario, and maybe we should add a summary about debt on the summary page, but we'll go to the main inputs to take a look at that. The the loan constant on this particular deal is 9.5%. And so how do we get there? The loan constant is just the monthly payment over the loan amount. And so this loan constant is coming out at 9.5%. So when your yield on the property is 13.5, meaning your income generated from the property relative to the all-in cost to buy the property. So that's your yield in this scenario. So your yield is 13.5%. I'll just put some describers here. So net operating income over cost basis gives you your yield. Your cost of debt, meaning how much that monthly payment is costing you relative to the loan balance, is probably the easiest way to say it. Debt service over loan balance. Yeah, so when this yield is higher than the cost of debt, you are experiencing leverage at your property's operations relative to, or you experience positive leverage, I should say. You're experiencing positive leverage from your property's operations relative to your cost of debt, and so it makes sense to use debt. However, if this cost of debt was 15%, then your debt costs more than your property's operations are able to service and still generate a positive outcome for you, if that makes sense. So all that is yield should be greater than your cost of debt in order to justify using debt. And again, this is not the interest rate on your loan. This is called the debt constant, meaning that accounting for amortization periods, which is really important in commercial real estate, you'll see that as we change the amortization period here, as this amortization period goes down, the loan constant goes up, right? And that makes intuitive sense. If your amortization period goes up, then your loan constant should go down. And why is that? Because you'll see that your monthly payment goes down as your amortization goes up. And again, why is that? It's because if you're amortizing a loan over a longer period, you have less payments per period to get to the end result, meaning that you have a little more room in your property's fundamentals to reasonably service the debt. So I know that's a lot of technical stuff. Hopefully that makes sense. Comment down below if you're super confused. Happy to answer questions further. Getting back to the summary page, as you can see, you can fit a lot of really juicy information onto one page. And again, happy to answer any questions that you're going to have about it. But let's get back to it. So we went over stabilized yield on cost. We went over debt constant. We went over trailing information, first year of operations, operations at sale. Went over property details, levered metrics, structured metrics. So maybe let's feed into this value add idea a little bit more. So in a value add deal, like we talked about at the beginning, you have you probably have some loss to lease, meaning there's some room to increase rents naturally, and then you have loss to renovated lease, I guess I'll call it, meaning the amount that you could reasonably raise rents to if you renovated those units. So in this scenario, we're saying, hey, we've got 157 units. Of those units, we honestly think that we can achieve our target rent level with most of those units, but we think that 46 of those units should be renovated and then could achieve this post-renovated market rent, which is a little bit of a premium over the others. So total cost of renovations of $135,000. This is saying $865 a unit to renovate. So that is the total cost of renovations over the total units. So it's blended down. If you actually look at this, right, 135,000 over 46 units. Bring this over. Right, so it's closer to like $3,000 a unit. And that's probably a little more accurate for what's being modeled in here. So that tells us, okay, all right, so $3,000 a renovated unit, or 865 a unit. It's probably light, but just depending on what renovations are being proposed here, maybe that's okay, maybe it's enough. We don't know. Like, we would need to dig in more. It's just a baseline assumption. But this is telling us that, hey, if you do those renovations, this is the return on cost of those renovations, right? So it's very accretive to the deal. That's how you're getting to a higher stabilized yield on cost. Frankly, most of the increase in yield on cost is coming from this loss to lease increase. But this is benefiting it too. So just finishing this out here, exit cap rate. This is the yield that the next buyer is going to get from buying your property. Really important metric to understand. The reason why this is kind of funky is because we include an exit cap rate inflator in here. So this started out at like 6.5%, and then it increases 10 to 15 basis points per year, getting to the year 7 sale. And that about wraps this up for this video. If you have any additional questions, comment down below. I probably missed a couple things, but hopefully this was informative and helpful. Again, if you want access to this model, feel free to purchase it off of our website. But thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.